G'day everyone, it's Bo from GrowthWise. Last week, if you were lucky enough to have secured a ticket for XeroCon and got to attend, you would have been able to see there was a lot of different AI sessions. And in some of those sessions, you probably would have seen this application called Lutra. Lutra is an AI tool that allows you to connect to other tools that are probably already in your app stacks and achieve different tasks. So today in this video, we're going to walk you through a simple workflow using Lutra. Before we get started, I've just put together a simple diagram at the moment to explain the flow of what we're going to do. So we're going to have Lutra on the left there, which is going to be processing all of the information. We're going to be using Google Drive to actually grab out some PDF files. And then we're going to be using Lutra again to actually interpret those PDF files and then push them into Xero as bills. So let's get stuck into it. Based on the previous section, you will be aware that we are going to need various different tools for this workflow. So if you don't have a Lutra account, that will be the first thing that I would suggest setting up. If you go to Lutra AI and then click the login/sign up button that's in the top right, enter your email address, you'll get sent a magic code, and then you'll be able to enter into Lutra. Now, Lutra does have a free tier, so you may be able to get pretty far through this just with the free tier, but you may hit a point where you do need to sign up for it. And the sign up cost, I believe, is $29 per month, but you can cancel it as well. So do this one first, and then we'll talk through the next steps that you'll need to do as well. Once you've logged into Lutra, you'll see the screen like this in front of you. At this point, we don't need to do anything extra. We're going to go and set up some of the other things that we need. Now that you've got Lutra set up, we're going to jump into Google Drive, and we've got to pre-configure a few things. So the first thing that we want to do is just make a folder within your Google Drive. So I've called mine Lutra example. And then from here, we need to look at our address bar. So up the top, you can see we've got drive.google.com. And then at the very end, we've got this long alphanumeric string. What we need to do is copy and paste this. So just after the slash here, we're going to then copy and paste that and just keep it somewhere safe. So whether it's in Notepad, a Google Drive folder, file, just somewhere that you can access it again. From this folder as well, I also suggest that you set up a process folder. And then once you've got it in here, if you double click on it, you'll notice that this folder string at the end has changed. Also save that, but we'll call that processed folder ID. So what we're actually doing, or what you'll see later, is Google Drive actually uses these strings here as unique identifiers for the folder, which can be very useful with the workflow that we're going to do. Once you've got those two things set aside and you're all good to go with that, we then just need to have some accounts payable bills. So any that you have laying around, you can just put 2 to 3, however many you want in this folder, because that's what we're going to use Lutra to process in this example. So at this point now, we've set up our Lutra account. We set up Google Drive with what we needed to have set up in there. The last thing that we need to have set up is our Xero account. So if you don't have a Xero account already, you can just sign up for the demo account. You do not need a paid account for this example, but I would assume most of you, if you're watching our content, probably already have a Xero account that you can use. I would still recommend using the demo account within your own accounts for this example, just so you're not interrupting any data in your own files. Now that we've preset everything that we need, we've got our Xero account, we've got the Google Drive account, we can jump back into Lutra. And from here, in the left-hand menu, we're going to click on Tools. In the Tools menu, you'll notice that the list of tools are all of the things that Lutra can directly connect to. Now, don't be afraid of this. If you're used to connecting Xero to different tools, so for example, Dext, when you actually connect Xero to Dext and you have the pop-up window to say what organizations you want to allow to be connected, that's all you need to do from this page. So I've already done that for Google Drive and I've already done that for Xero. So I'm just going to make sure that both of those are actually enabled and ready to go for when we start the workflow. Before we move on to the actual workflow, I just wanted to briefly discuss a thing called scopes or permissions. So if we scroll down to Xero, we click the settings button. You can see here it says to use this tool, you must connect and permission your Xero account. So the workflow you normally go through where you say connect to a particular organization, in this example, we're using the demo account. These are the permissions that you're actually getting granted by Xero's API to be able to interact with. So how it says accounting.reports.read, accounting.settings, accounting.transactions, they're the things that Lutra will be allowed to interact with based on what it's requested from Xero. So if we scroll to the top as well and we click on See All Actions up here, we can actually get an outlay of all of the different tasks that Lutra can actually achieve. So this is important. So for two reasons. One is security. You don't want to give things to Lutra that you don't necessarily want it to actually be able to do, but you also want to know what the capability of the tool is. So if you don't have it listed in this top section at the moment, it means that you're likely not going to be able to do it. So Lutra is continually improving this. They have added things recently like payroll employees for Australia that wasn't there previously. So keep an eye on it. If you use it now and you think, hey, it'd be nice to be able to do this particular workflow, just because it doesn't have the scope now doesn't mean it will not have it in the future. Just going to briefly touch on the Google Drive scopes and permissions as well. So up on Google Drive, click Settings, and you can see a similar set of actions. So if we say See All Actions, we can see everything that it's going to be able to do. So again, just be cautious with some of these tools. If it's got full read and write access to different things, you need to be very cautious to make sure it doesn't move files, rename them. Generally, they're pretty good, but just be aware that you are granting access for these things to be able to take specific actions. You can change the scopes and you can limit them down further. So my suggestion is normally for this, I've actually just opened everything up because of the accounts that we're using. But normally the process that you would go through is limit the scopes to the things that you only need for the workflows that you're trying to achieve. Sorry, it's a bit of a long video, but we wanted to be able to explain a lot of the concepts along the way whilst we did this. But we're now at a point where we can actually do the prompt. So all we need to do now, click on the chats button in the left for Lutra. And I've got the prompt that we prepared earlier. This will be in our GitHub. We'll have some links in the description to it. And what you'll see here is the full prompt. So I'll read through that and explain each part of it shortly. For any AI tool that you use, the input greatly affects the output. So you should definitely take a little bit more time to actually structure your inputs. If you're using OpenAI or you're using Claude by Anthropic, both of them actually have prompt guides that can help you to structure this in a better way. We'll leave some of the links to those in the description of the video. We're almost ready to test it out. How exciting. If you remember from the start of the video, we said to keep that folder ID handy as well as the processed ID. So we've actually got the folder ID here and our processed folder ID. So you can read through the prompt yourself, but basically we're just saying, here's where our invoices are. We want you to process them. Don't make assumptions like things should be in general expenses. Try and use your best judgment for where things should be allocated, and then create the payable entries in Xero. So if we go into the Xero demo company, we can see in draft at the moment, there's nothing there, and the amount of counts with them. So we've got 13 in awaiting payment and 1 in awaiting approval. So let's just click go and see what happens. I will be pausing the recording just so you don't have to wait for every step to go through. But you can actually see at the top, we found the Google Drive folder, we found the invoices within it, and then now we've started to actually read those PDF files and extract the data from them as well. Okay, so you can see here, it's extracted the billing data from the 3 PDF files, and so Lutra quite often will actually prompt you for the next step. I'll show you why a little bit later, but it's not too bad of a thing, but it just means that sometimes you can't really one-shot a prompt. You've actually got to work through the workflow by yourself. So we've got that data there now. Let's say connect to Xero, find appropriate expense accounts and for these bills. And let's just prompt it ourselves and say connect to Xero, find appropriate expense accounts for the bills and enter. I'm going to say ACC pay so it doesn't get confused, just so it knows that we're entering bills, entries into Xero. Now you should be able to see that we've connected to Xero. We've found 27 expense accounts, and then it's going to go through the reasoning. So it's saying Bright Spark Energy, Crystal Springs, where it thinks it should actually be allocating things to. So you can see here the actual assumptions that it's made. It says I can see the accounts have good matches available. I can suggest much better options, so that's fine. And let's just say create contacts in Xero for these vendors, then create the bills. We'll click on that. We can see now that it's actually created all of the different contacts, and now it's just saying, are these the right accounts that we want to allocate to? And let's just say approve these account selections and create the bills. So if we jump into the draft demo company bills section again, we should still be able to see that there's nothing in here currently. But as Lutra goes through and it does its actual workflow, we should actually get some entries starting to come through. Okay, this is interesting in the workflow here. You can see it's actually just confirming the different codes that it's going to use for all of those different bills. So that's important when you're actually pushing the data into Xero. If you get that wrong, the bill's not going to approve properly. So you can see now we're actually starting to finally do the actual accounts payable entries. All right, we should be able to see here now the actual, it says invoice, but it is a bill. It's just the terminology that Lutra is using. So we can see that the actual bill is being created for each of the different PDFs that we have. So let's jump into here and refresh it, and hopefully we should see some entries coming through here. And look at that. So we've got SkillForge Training Solutions, Crystal Springs, and Bright Spark. So that's all just been processed by Lutra, grabbing the data out of the folder, doing the assumption on what it should actually use for the chart of accounts, and then pushing the actual entries into here. You will notice that there is no attachment on these. So as I said earlier in the video about the different scopes and permissions, that's something that's not yet implemented in Lutra, but it may be implemented in the future, where you'll actually be able to grab the PDF and then do that entry into Xero itself as well. This is an interesting one. If you remember at the start of the prompt, we actually had to create the Google Sheets entry to show us everything that had happened. Looks like I forgot to actually turn on that permission. So Lutra is giving us that example to say to enable that. So you can see here, activate the Sheets tool. So I can just say, create the sheet now that you have access. And that should then start to create that Google Sheet that actually tracks everything that we were aiming to do. All right, you can see now that it's actually created the Google Sheet, and it's going to start putting in the entries to just show what's actually happened. So you can see now everything's actually been filled in, the currency, the dollar amounts, the Xero invoice ID, so we can actually link directly to it in the future if we wanted to, the process date. So basically just a log of everything that happened. Now that we've successfully gone through that whole workflow, you can actually see here that Lutra has this option that says set up this process as a reusable playbook for future bill processing. So we've already built out our workflow. Yes, it takes a little bit of time, but the good thing is with Lutra, you put the time in at the start, make sure everything's working, and then you can say set up this process as a reusable playbook for future bill processing. Let's click on that and see what happens. So what it should do is actually package up everything that we've done to make it something that will be reusable and repeatable. So instead of having to reprompt it the whole way through, it's going to create this playbook that allows us to reuse everything that we just did. Okay, so you can see now we've got the playbook plan, says everything that's going to be done, and you can read through all of the different parts and steps that it's going to take. And then all we need to do is say, do you want to create a new playbook? Yes. And it's going to use those steps above, and it should actually save us a playbook that we can replay. So you can see here, it's now generated that playbook, and it's also had a look at some variables that we've actually had in that script that we set up. So something like the top level folder that we talked about where we're storing our invoices, we can replace that drive folder so you don't have to use the same one. Your processed folder as well, you can actually replace that with something else. And you can see you can either rerun it just by choosing the IDs or just reuse the same folders, or you can schedule it. So you can see Lutra, yes, it takes a little bit of time to actually set everything up, but once you've set it up and you've tested it, you can create the playbooks that you can then rerun multiple times to do a workflow. If you're still watching the video up to this point, thanks for watching along. I know it's been quite a long one, but I wanted to really go in depth on how you can do one of these workflows. So just to reiterate, we had the invoices set up in Google Drive. We had Lutra set up to process those invoices. We had Lutra connect to Xero and make a bunch of assumptions around which chart of accounts to use. And then it made the choice of pushing those accounts payable entries into Xero as draft bills. The good thing is as well, at the end, as you saw, we could make a repeatable playbook. So instead of having to do that entire prompt guide like we've gone through before, we can just rerun that playbook. So the good thing, like I said, with Lutra, once you get everything set up, you can actually create those playbooks and then you can schedule them. So if you've got workflows that you want to set up and just rerun on a regular basis, set up a playbook. It might take a little bit of time initially to get the workflow that you want, but once it is set up, you can create that playbook and then you can rerun it. If this video has been helpful, make sure you hit the like button and make sure you subscribe. Cheers.